My company almost failed a couple years ago. Man, I could not get past my own ego to close it, which is a good thing because we're still alive and pushing today, right? Sometimes I think, oh, it'd be great to just go find a job. Welcome to Flight Level 0. It all starts here. I'm Joe Peebles, your host. Welcome to the show. If you are a veteran and you're in need of help, support, or just need somebody to talk to, please call the Veterans Crisis Line. Dial 988 and then press 1. Everything is confidential. They just want to get you help. What you're going through is a unique situation that only service members and their families can understand. So reach out to the people who get it. Flight Level 0 is brought to you by our sponsor, JP Aerotechnics. JP Aero is an AOG mobile maintenance provider for Part 135 and Part 91 operators. We provide quick and reliable service to the southeastern USA. If you need help, you have a downed aircraft, MELs, or just need someone to do service checks on a regular basis, we can support you. Call 833-807-3131 or just email us at aog@jpaerotechnics.com. All right, guys, welcome to the show. Really excited to have you guys back. It's been a pretty eventful week out here in Hotlanta, Georgia. We went from freezing cold weather to 70 degrees. They're talking about the weather dropping back to freezing cold weather next week. So really excited about that. Man, not a lot of business to talk about today. We're just going to get right down to business. Today, I have a guest on the show. We've been talking back and forth for a couple months now. Not a lot, just a little bit, but I'm really excited I got to meet this guy. And I was going to put together this elaborate introduction like I've done for a lot of people that come on the show. But I was looking through his LinkedIn and I was like, man, this is the perfect intro. So I'm just going to read you guys this intro to a good friend of mine now, Carson Fox, everybody. This is Carson Fox, but I'm just going to read this out for him. But beyond transactions, I build relationships with people who value trust, strategy, and execution. My clients don't have time for inefficiency, and neither do I. What drives me? Mastery, faith, and health. The foundation of everything I do. Learning from history's greatest founders, Charlie Munger, good one. James Dyson, great one. Steve Jobs, fantastic. Success leaves clues. Last note, becoming the person God created me to be. Everybody, I want to introduce you to Carson Fox. Welcome to the show, man. How's it going?
Thanks, Joe, man. Good to be on here. Grateful.
Absolutely, man. Dude, you're from South Cackalack, my stomping grounds.
Not far away from you. That's all. About 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I grew up in Columbia. I lived in Columbia for a while, so not too far.
Yeah, I actually grew up in Columbia as well. I don't even know if you knew that.
No, I didn't, man. I lived in
my whole life there until the Citadel. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I just read that you went to the Citadel. Holy crap. That's a school.
Yeah, it's quite the change, changing college that most people experience, that's for sure. Very unique, really cool. Would totally do it over again. I mean, just an amazing school. So much you learn there. A lot of it's just life skills than it is just education, and zero regrets. Very happy I went there. So actually going there this weekend. I haven't. Whenever you go to the school, typically right whenever you finish, you're like, I want to get the heck out of here. I've been here for 4 years. I haven't been able to leave whenever I want. I've been restricted. Had to go to all the football games that are home, dress up, do inspections, this and that. And then once you finish, you're like, I don't want to be in Charleston anymore for the next couple of years. So I'm actually going this weekend to vacation there for a couple of days. And I'm going to my first parade since 2018, which is kind of crazy. So it'll be fun.
Dude, that's nuts, man. I know the Citadel is a hard school. They are super disciplined. A lot of people
very much so.
Compare it. I feel like a lot of guys who get out who don't go to the military feel like they were in the military.
Well, it's a military structure. I mean, it's ran by people that either were in the military or who are still, actively in the military, active duty. So it's not just like you just, dress up and act all military-like. I mean, it's very much, it is a military structure.
Did you guys have to do
whenever you get up to go to bed?
Did you guys have to do PT and stuff? and
Oh
all
yeah.
those courses. Did you guys? So when I was in airborne school, we had a bunch of
Hmm.
students coming in. I remember I was in airborne school, and they had a bunch of guys from West Point. They had other
Hmm.
cadets from other locations. Did you guys do that type of stuff, like for summer break?
So there's summer stuff that you can do depending on if you're pursuing a military contract.
Okay, okay,
But at the Citadel, I mean, from the time you get up and having to have your shoes shine, your uniform perfect, doing PT at 5:30 a.m., having to get your hair cut every single week, at least as a freshman, or as what they call a knob, doing anything essentially the upperclassmen do or tell you to do, sitting on the front 3 inches of your chair for lunch, squaring your meals, going, having inspections every couple of weekends, staying up till 1 a.m., cleaning your room. Some people stayed up till 5 a.m. I was never one of those guys. Didn't
yeah,
wait to the last minute to get that done. Yeah, I mean, it's very much military structure. And if you do something that's dumb, you get tours, which is an hour marching with a rifle back and forth in what's called a quad, which is just essentially, I call it like a big fraternity house.
yeah.
And you have to walk back and forth for an hour. And I know people that literally just weren't smart when they were a cadet and racked up 400 tours. So
Whew.
400 hours marching back and forth, and you can't
Yeah.
even leave until you finish those. So it's crazy what you can get yourself into.
Yeah, man, I'm sure. It sounds pretty rough. I'm sure.
But it's all worth it. I promise. It's all worth it. If
Yeah.
anyone on here is listening or thinking about or has family members, it's very much worth it for the relationships and the connections you built, not only then, but also afterwards. And it's much, much easier, I'd say, to connect with Citadel grads afterwards than it would be, University of South Carolina or
Mm.
Kentucky or just like a random college. So it's opened up some really cool doors that normally wouldn't happen as a result of just going to another normal college. So
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. That's with all the stuff that I've read about it and the people that I've listened to a couple of interviews of people who've been to the Citadel, and I'm just like, when I
sure.
read that, I was like, that explains a lot about Carson. That's
Sure.
pretty
Yeah.
great. Um,
No, it's good.
So yeah, man, let's start it out, dude. A lot of times, whenever I bring a guest on the show, man, I want to get a little to know a little bit about their upbringing, how they kind of
Yeah.
got into the space. So before we do that, what are you doing right now? What is your current title, or what do you currently do in aviation?
Yeah. So to put it simply, I'm a jet broker. So I buy and sell private jets and turboprops for corporations and CEOs of privately held companies. If you think of what a realtor does, but obviously with houses, I do the same exact things except for business aviation, so private jets and turboprops.
Got it. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
So we know where you're from. You were raised in Columbia, not
Yep.
Greenville, not Charleston,
Not Greenville.
Columbia,
Yeah.
South Cackalack. So when you were growing up, is this where you saw yourself being, in aviation?
Yeah, not at all. So both my parents were in the medical field. So my
Hmm.
mom's a nurse. My dad's not around anymore, unfortunately, but he was a physician assistant. So he was in
Hmm.
dermatology. And I knew growing up that I wanted to have nothing to do with the medical field.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I toiled between a lot of ideas. One was being like a harbor pilot, guiding the ships in and out of port. Thought that was always super cool. Interesting story. In college at the Citadel between my sophomore and junior year, I actually lived on a tugboat for a whole summer, a week on, a
What?
week off. Yeah, very interesting. After doing that experience though, or living a summer,
Yeah.
I tell myself I don't want to live on a ship and I don't want to do anything maritime related. So that kind of crossed that off. I, thought I'd work for, I don't know, some big corporation or, I really didn't have an idea. But my junior slash senior year, we actually came across my dad and I, someone who had been just a real estate investor and he would develop properties and all kinds of stuff like that. And actually leading up to this point, being an only child, I lived in the country my whole life pretty much. And I worked on farms, I ran tractors, I pretty much set my own schedule and to a degree my own pay. And so up to that point, the only job I ever had was working as a server at Lizard's Thicket, which is like, it's almost like Cracker Barrel, but a couple tiers down from that.
Yeah, I
I
know.
did that for 2 weeks and I was like, I'm done. I make less money than I could just working for myself. And so, you know, as I was kind of exploring, I actually decided after the Citadel that I was going to go into real estate.
Hmm.
And that's actually where I started off.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
so when you went to the Citadel, you had like no plans on joining the military whatsoever. You kind of just like, this is just a school that I'm going to go to and get my degree.
Yeah, frankly, I actually went to the Citadel. I really wanted to go to USC, and
Okay.
I got into some of the other campuses, but I didn't get into the main campus. My freshman, sophomore year of high school, I didn't do terrible by any means, but I just didn't apply myself like I should have.
Yeah.
But then obviously I turned it around my junior, senior year, and so didn't get into there, got into the Citadel and a couple other places, and was like, I guess I'm going to go to the Citadel.
Yeah.
But funny thing enough, whenever I first went to the Citadel, you can actually stay there overnight. It's called
Oh.
like pre-nobbing, and so you kind of get to see firsthand what it's like.
Yeah.
And my mom dropped me off on a Thursday. She picked me up on a Friday, and she's like, "Do you want to go to the parade after that all the cadets put on?" And I was like, "Heck no! Like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
I don't want to have anything to do with this school. I don't even want to go here again." Obviously, that changed, but that's just a brief story
No.
on the initial kind of career choice.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. I was just wondering, why would you go to the Citadel if you weren't planning on going to the military? I think it's one out of three cadets
Hmm.
join to become non-commissioned officers, or is it?
Yeah, or
Sorry,
commissioned.
commissioned
Yeah,
officers.
yeah. So
Yeah.
about a third going the military, and then two-thirds go civilian.
Yeah.
I thought about going into the military, but based on some of my just kind of long-term life goals, I just felt like it would somewhat delay where I wanted to go. When
Yeah.
I look back, I don't really have any regrets. I wouldn't do it anything any way different. But actually, interestingly enough, most of my really good friends are actually like all in the military, which is
Yeah.
super interesting. But yeah, that's just a little bit of the story of my time there.
Okay, cool, man. So you get out of there, you're in real estate, you're
Hmm.
building this real estate career. I'm assuming that
Yeah.
you probably were doing pretty good there. And how long did you do that?
Yeah, so I don't know if you even remember this, but that's how we initially just very briefly touched each other whenever I was in an Arate.
Okay.
So a group ran by Ed Milet and Andy Frisella. I think we had like maybe briefly spoken once, but yeah. So whenever I finished the Citadel, I was like, I'm going to do something in real estate, and didn't have money from parents or anything like that. And long story short, I started a real estate investing company with 3,000 bucks. Grew it over 5 years. We did 120, 130 homes that we flipped, bought and sold. A lot of those were wholesales. Some properties were bought through like creative finance, buying it subject to, all those types of things. And about 4 years in, I took a introductory flight here, actually at the Greenville Airport, where my office is, and
Okay.
that's where I fell in love with aviation and
Yeah.
was kind of the catalyst to eventually getting into aviation.
So that's what sparked. That was your
Yes.
little boom. Now you're hooked.
Hmm.
And then the aviation industry just kind of reeled you right in. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and really interesting. My grandpa, who passed away a couple years ago, he was 101 when he passed. Just an
Oh
amazing
man.
guy. So
Wow.
such a cool guy. He was actually in the Army Air Corps
Okay.
before the Air Force was even formed, and then
Yeah.
he was in the Air Force. But on his 100th birthday in Charleston, South Carolina, he wanted to go flying. So I actually got to fly in a 172 with him and an instructor. And when I think back as to even why I took the test flight or took the introductory flight, I really think it was probably because of him,
Yeah.
because it was just a really cool experience to fly my first little plane before. And so now that I kind of think of it, a lot of this is probably due to just even taking that 45-minute flight with him on his 100th birthday. So that's how it started, I guess.
that's a pretty awesome story. Like,
Yeah.
we think about people that are in our lives, our elders, and you think about, man, what did I do with that person? And the good memories always, you want to have those good memories, and I think that, dude, that's an amazing memory to have with a
Hmm.
grandparent. Especially if
Yeah.
you're close with
Very
them.
cool.
Like,
Hmm.
man, that's a phenomenal way to remember them for the rest of your life.
Oh yeah.
It's pretty great.
I have nothing but great memories from my time with him. So very thankful.
So you're a pilot now?
Actually, not.
Oh, okay, okay,
People often think I am.
yeah.
So actually started, I have about 28 hours in a SR20, so Cirrus SR20. Actually was getting the time whenever I was operating my real estate business. And I had to make the choice, do I continue getting lessons or do I hire another employee? And I
Mm,
decided at the time to hire. So we'll see if I finish my hours or not. I have a really interesting take on owner operators flying just personally, just because I see so many crashes.
yeah.
I think it's really important to go about it in a very intentional way. If you do get your license as an owner operator, it's obviously different. If you have a pilot or maybe even a co-pilot you pay to like fly with you. But I'm actually considering getting my helicopter's license
There you go.
instead of finishing my private because I'm waiting on a potential acquisition to purchase an Airbus helicopter for someone. I was like, huh, that would be fun, but we'll see. We'll see where that takes me.
I love helos, man. I'm a helo guy. I
They're cool.
started out on helos. I got a stinking helo right here. I
Ah,
got
there we go.
I got
That's
two
awesome.
helicopters on my chest too, man. I started
Let's see
out.
them.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do that. I don't want to. I don't want to get body shamed.
Yeah, yeah. That's
No,
hilarious.
uh, no, man. I started out on helos in the army, and
Hmm.
so my bread and butter, the real love and joy of my life is working on helicopters and crewing helicopters. I had thought about getting my helicopter license as well, just
Hmm.
because I think they're way cooler. Sorry, BizAv people. I guess there are helicopters in BizAv. You got Agustas and really nice Bell, 427s
Yeah.
and stuff like that, Eurocopters. But you know, you can land anywhere you pretty much please. As long as there's no obstructions on
Hmm.
the ground. They're really safe if your engines fail. You can auto rotate to the ground if you have enough height. And I mean, they're just expensive to operate. That's the thing, man. It's like
Yeah.
you gotta have jets are expensive, but helos are really expensive too. But man, I love them. I love them, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, and interestingly enough, if you're within about 150, maybe 200 nautical mile circle of where you're at, generally, it's faster to take a helicopter than it is a plane, whether that's a piston plane or turboprop or jet, just because you're likely going to be able to get closer to your destination, even though, the jet's going to go, you know, 400 miles an hour maybe in that short span of time when the helicopter only goes, let's say, 130 knots. So it's interesting the time that you make up in a helicopter from a short distance standpoint as opposed to a fixed wing.
Interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. That's
Little
kind of like the sweet spot. So
I'm gonna put that in my reasons to buy a helicopter.
there we go. Give you a reason.
Another reason other than
Yeah.
I just like them a lot. Yeah, man. So all right, so you're doing pretty good. You take this flight. You go on this
Mhm.
amazing flight with your grandfather. You know, what are you thinking? Like, oh, I need to get into this industry, or was it like a slow trickle into figuring out what to do? Like, what were your next steps there?
So I think through decisions very thoughtfully or carefully, but I don't just like ponder on decisions a long time. I'm very much a high like D driver personality. So once I have the facts, like I kind of just remove emotion from the situation. And after getting into it, I will say I kind of thought about it and prayed for it for about a year because I had my real estate company
Yeah.
and I have a extremely supportive wife who's just absolutely amazing. And I just told her, I was like, I really love like aviation's really cool. I'm thinking about, making the change. And I was in an industry that was very much transactional to
Yeah.
where we were buying investment properties from people going through foreclosures, divorces, inheriting homes. And I wanted to do business with these people over and over, but in those unique life situations, that just doesn't happen. So
Yeah.
I found myself, as you had mentioned, like in the beginning of introducing me, I'm very much relationship driven. I love like building like true, authentic relationships with people. But that skill set I have or gift I have from God, I didn't feel I could really use it to the capacity in that space than I could in something slightly different, whether that
Yeah.
was real estate or aviation. And so about a year later, I just felt like things they aligned. And I heard a podcast from someone, and he said this: if you want to be rich, solve rich people's problems. If you want to be poor, solve poor people's problems.
Hmm.
And it really made me, sit for a second and think to myself, of those two, like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And I was, in fact, kind of on the latter end of that question. And so then that's kind of whenever I started thinking about, well, if I'm going to go in business aviation, what are those problems that I can solve? And what are those skill sets that I have from being an entrepreneur the last 5 years that would best, translate into the business aviation space?
Yeah.
And, one day I thought actually we took a 4 year delayed honeymoon. My wife's a realtor. And I was like, huh, like people have to buy jets. Like, how do they buy them? And, I couldn't find anything online. I found like one podcast at the time. And it's not like there's gurus teaching it, there's no books on it really. And I came across something called IATA, the
Hmm.
International Aircraft Dealers Association. And it pretty much opened my eyes to like the top brokerages in the world. And I pretty much reached out to every single one. I did reach out to every single one, got a couple of different opportunities, and decided that, it'd make a lot of sense for me to join a company, for a period of time to learn the business and, to humble myself and work my way up, to come from an entrepreneur standpoint to like working with a company. And that's the decision I made. And so that's kind of, I mean, that's really the brief story on how I got to where I am today.
Dude, that's a big leap.
Not easy either.
Yeah, man. I think of this, my company almost failed a couple years ago.
Hmm.
And man, I could not get past my own ego to close it, which is a good thing because
Hmm.
we're still alive and pushing today, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes I think, oh, it'd be great to just go find a job, or it'd be a good idea for me to do that. But then I feel like I would lose a lot of the freedoms that I enjoy being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And in some ways you do, in some ways you don't, right?
Hmm.
And so that is a huge jump. More power to you, man. Like, that's a big deal. And I've gotten a couple offers to hop into sales positions for brokerages, and they're
Sure.
they're not bad gigs. Like they're actually really good gigs. There's a lot of freedom in that space because it's
Hmm.
commission based. But I think in a
Yeah.
commission based position, you with your entrepreneurial spirit, you're able to capitalize on that.
Yeah.
So it is a good
Very much so.
crossover. You know,
Yeah. I mean, being an entrepreneur, you know, learning how to market, how to sell, like the importance of even, having all of your leads and clients in a CRM, learning how to talk to them, even understanding financials to a certain degree. All that stuff has been very, very helpful. And if I wouldn't have done what I would have done, I wouldn't be, you know, where I am at right this second.
yeah,
I won't say that I'm at the tip top yet by any means, because, I certainly have more room to grow. I grow and learn something new every day, but it helped tremendously. And I'm very grateful for, being in that space. And eventually I will get back into, owning my own thing. But in this season of life right now, I'm, as they say, paying my dues. So.
yeah, yeah, man. I get it. You mentioned learning from history's great founders like Charlie Munger and James Dyson, Steve Jobs. Who's your favorite? Who's the one you
Oh
like the
man,
most
these
there?
things pump me up. So I love reading. One of my best friend, he got me into biographies about a year ago. I love Warren Buffett a lot. He breaks down very difficult things into simplified forms, such as one of my most favorite lessons is inverted thinking. So
Okay.
if you think of like how to solve a problem, most people think of where they're at, where they want to go, and they think of like all the things they need to do, in between.
Okay.
Well, and usually it's from kind of start to finish. So, if I want to buy a house, let's just say that's the end result. Well, what's like the first thing I need to do? Maybe I need to get financing, and then I need to get in touch with the realtor, and then so on and so on.
Yeah.
Well, Charlie, he talks about inverting that thinking. So thinking, all right, instead of beginning to end, let's go end to beginning. So I just bought the house. What did I do right before I bought the house? Well, I went to the attorney's office. Well, then
Yeah.
what happened right before the attorney's office? Well, like maybe my bank wired the money and so on. But with his type of thinking, he often decides or decides to think in a way of how could I make this situation worse instead of better? So like if I wanted to be the best dad, then that would be very simple how to think that through. But if I decided, all right, let me think of this in the fact of I want to be the worst dad. Like what are all those things I'd have to be the worst dad? Write all those things down and then try to figure out like what are the top one, two, or three things that would absolutely make me be the worst dad. And then invert those completely to the complete opposite. And then those three things would tell you the three things you have to do to be the best dad.
Huh.
And that's his whole thinking behind inverting your thinking and problem solving. And so
Yeah.
that's by far one of my best things or favorite things I've learned from him. The other thing with Dyson, his story is really cool because he, for, 15 plus years, he had this concept for Dyson, the vacuum cleaners we know today.
Okay.
But he couldn't get anyone to buy into the idea. So he literally owns 100% of Dyson, which is they bring in well over, I think, $1 billion a year. I mean, it's a huge company.
Yeah.
And for like 14, 15, 16 years, he was in his mid 40s until he actually really started selling a lot of these Dyson vacuum cleaners and actually making a true like living as an entrepreneur. And it
Wow.
just kind of invigorates someone who is an entrepreneur that sometimes things take a lot of time, and there's people who've had it a lot worse than I have.
Yeah.
And it just takes consistent effort and not giving up because
Yeah.
he had plenty of time to give up and he
For
didn't.
sure.
And now he's a billionaire. I mean, it's amazing his story. So, and he's very innovative too, which is cool.
Yeah. Reading stories like that and diving into biographies about people like the Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger story. There's so many, right? There's so many
Yeah.
great stories between them both being
Hmm.
just being like the yin and yang for each other and keeping each other accountable in certain ways and just really
Yeah.
working well together. If you haven't, have you heard of the Founders podcast?
Yeah. That's actually, I only listen to like really two main podcasts, and
Yeah.
that's one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love listening to Dave
Yeah, if you don't
or David.
mind, almost monotone, Dave. Like the show is fantastic. The content is great. I love
Yeah.
Founders.
Yeah.
My wife can't listen to it, and some of my friends are like, what are you listening to?" And I don't listen. I've gotten to a point where I'm podcasted out, and that's funny because I'm a podcast
Yeah.
host. There's some times where I listen to too much, and it's just too much information into my
Yeah.
brain, and I can't. It's like I'm almost frozen because I have so much information. But Founders is one of those podcasts where if I need to get inspired
Hmm.
or I'm just looking for some type of really something that's going to motivate me today or get me going or get my wheels spinning on, or if I'm feeling like, sorry, I dropped my phone, or if I'm feeling like I need some type of inspiration, or I want to learn strategy, dude, Founders is great.
Yeah.
They've got some really great shows. The founder of the King Airs are on there.
Hmm.
That's a really great story. I forgot what
I haven't heard
episode
that
it
one.
is. I'll try and tag it in the show notes so
Yeah.
you guys. But if you look it up, I forget her name, but there was a
Hmm.
husband and wife. The husband passed away, and the wife was told to go ahead and shut it down because you're just a woman, And
Yeah.
King Airs are pretty vintage aircraft, so this is back in the time where
Hmm.
women didn't have a lot of rights, and she was like, "Screw that!" And she's a boss, dude, from top to
Wow.
bottom.
That's
Fantastic
cool.
story, and he's probably got 30 podcasts on Charlie Munger himself.
Yeah, he has a
Um,
lot. I mean,
yeah,
he
there's a lot.
but Charlie Munger at the same time, he's generally speaking a very well-known entrepreneur and well-known just investor
Yeah.
throughout the world. Whereas, Dyson or some of the other people he talks about, like Naval Ravikant,
Mm,
who Naval Ravikant, he developed not Investor Lift, but essentially a angel investing site where
mm,
you can put your idea, your company on there and have investors invest into it.
got
There's
it.
a lot of people like Naval that you can learn a ton from, but they're just not as well known. And so
Yeah.
I found it's a great source to give me ideas, of who to read next. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
But I like I like business, or I like biographies so much more than regular business books,
Yeah.
because all it's doing is it's sharing successes and failures of these people. I mean, that's all it is. It's their life story, and it's not someone trying to sell you on themselves so that eventually you do business with them or anything like that. There's no alternative like motive,
Yeah.
and the principles are like tried and true. They've been tested over and over. And so, if you take a lot of their lessons and apply it to your life or my life, there's a lot of things that we can do and a lot of momentum that we can build that others that only read business books, they're just not going to get. And like really successful people learn a lot from, other legend, entrepreneurs, and actually read a lot of biographies I found. So it's a cool way to, connect with people and have a fun conversation.
Yeah, man. Just like you said on your LinkedIn page, success leaves clues. And
Hmm.
those clues are in their story. How did they live? And for somebody like me, kind of like what you were saying, it's like understanding that there's a lot of time between the start and the initial start and the actual success. Like the overnight success
Yeah.
is really like a 10 to 15 year wait,
Oh yeah.
of building a
It's crazy.
system and a process that actually works and generates revenue. And so like just keeps you kind of motivated and also centered and
Hmm.
grounded, and to understand the reality of the situation. It's not going to happen
Yeah.
this year. It might not
No.
happen, and it might, would be amazing if it did. But it'd be like winning the lottery, where you just made it overnight, and you're going to end up blowing your cash reserve because you don't understand how to operate with that type of money. I think that's
Yeah.
something that Ed Milet used to say, and I'm sure he says it still. It's life happens to you, not for you.
Hmm.
Sorry, life happens for you,
Life
not to
happens for
you.
you, not to you. Yeah.
Um, and I think that as you grow and you develop, you go through these different phases of life so that you can learn how to operate. And I feel like God blesses you according to what you can handle.
Hmm.
Everybody says, God will never put you in a situation you can't handle. That's
Hmm.
good and bad. And so, well, I feel like it's good and bad. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, you prove yourself in this situation, you can do well in this situation. Now God's going to hand you the blessing that's
Hmm.
coming, right?
More
Um,
responsibility,
right.
whatever that looks like. Yeah.
And so I love the fact that one of your statements is becoming the person that God created me to be. A lot of people don't
Hmm.
talk about faith on LinkedIn or in business. And a lot of people are surprised that I'm a Christian a lot of times because I cuss like a sailor. I think we were talking about this right before the podcast.
Hmm.
Uh, I cuss like a sailor, but I do believe in God. And I do believe I have a strong faith
Hmm.
and that's why I am the way that I am. That's why I treat people the way that I treat people. And I think it is important to live your life in that way. You got to have your unnegotiables. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Your
Correct. Yeah.
non-negotiables in your life. And one of those for me is faith.
Hmm.
And for a long time, I I didn't believe that. So how has your faith played into your job now, in your
Hmm.
entrepreneurship journey? How has that worked out for you or played out for you?
Yeah, Joe. I mean, it's by far it's the number one important thing in my life. I mean, I would die right now if someone said, if you claim to be a follower of Jesus Christ, I'm going to shoot you out. I mean, I would literally say, well, I'm not backing down. Like I stand up for what I believe, because he's blessed me in so many ways, and he's helped me through so many tough situations. By far, if we even get to this, in this podcast, my passing of my dad a couple years ago, that was very sudden. But I mean, from the time I get up and reading my Bible, like it's the number one important thing in my life, and it guides, like he guides my life, and he provides every single thing that I need. And whenever we talked about, or you had mentioned LinkedIn, and from a professional standpoint, you know, most people blend in this world. They want to be like everyone else. They don't want to be any different. They don't want to be ridiculed. They just want to just like live kind of an ordinary life. And for most people, that's fine. Whatever, do what you want. But for me, like I don't want an ordinary life, and I'm not going to be someone that I'm not. And you're either going to like me or you're not. If you don't like me, that's fine. But I'm going to be who I am, and I'm going to share what I believe, and I'm never going to shove it down someone's throat, but I'm going to stand up for what I believe. And so I think it's really important to share those types of things on especially platforms like LinkedIn, which generally most people are so focused on presenting just this very polished professional picture, perfect,
Yeah.
all the I's are dotted, no
Yeah.
grammar mistakes, whatever. And it doesn't make you any different than anyone else. And it certainly doesn't make you memorable. And I've just found that I've actually been able to connect with a lot of people who see just various posts and things like that are like, I really like that you've posted that. Like it's encouraged me to like speak up and whatnot. So, I mean, it's helped me tremendously. And regardless of whatever you believe, I just encourage you to share that with others, because you'll certainly lose some people, but you'll connect with far more many people. And even if I don't believe in what you believe in, I have so much more respect for you because you actually share and you're open about what's important and what your values are. And it creates a cool dialogue
Yeah.
that, I'm able to have with you, whether it's through Google Meet videos or whatever. I do video meetings with people, or we get lunch together. It's always important to, I think, share your perspective, because then other people challenge that perspective, and it helps you to learn, like, what do I not know about what I need to believe, or what's important to me. And it helps you see other perspectives of other people. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. For a long time my faith journey is a little new.
Mm-hmm.
It's like not new, but kind of like rekindled, right?
Okay.
And for the longest time, I was an atheist, and I felt like people who believed were weak because they had to rely on some unseen force to find,
Mm.
some type of strength in themselves.
Yeah. Or peace. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was really crazy, man. But now I can see. I mean, now that I am a believer, and I
Mm-hmm.
try to live in a way that I feel like God would want me to, right? By treating people correctly, and um,
Yeah.
not only that, but like I mean, there's a lot of ways that you live as a believer to just stay true to yourself and true to God.
And we're all so flawed,
Right.
whether you're
Yeah.
an atheist or into Hinduism or Christian. Like the foundation of Christianity is like, I'm no better than you are. So like
Yeah.
I have just as many problems, if not more. But it's just what guides me, is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Always, a lot different than other faiths or religions. So yeah, I mean that's important to know. Like I'm not better than anyone else, and we're all sinners, and
Yeah.
that's how we are.
And it's okay. It's all right.
Mhm.
It's just the way we are. um, but yeah. Okay. So getting off that subject, I'm really enjoying the show. I need to pull up this thing real quick because
Yeah,
there was
yeah.
uh, there was something you said on your. Yeah, I had asked. I asked. So everybody, if you don't know this, I have a couple questions I ask everybody, and one of my questions like, is there a specific takeaway message that you'd like for everybody to have? And you wrote, it's worth taking a leap of faith to get after what is important to you. What does that mean?
Hmm. I mean, to me, that's taking risk in life, not getting so comfortable in a position that, you don't want to stay in for the rest of your life. And like a lot of people getting so comfortable with not being where they are, but not uncomfortable enough to make that change and to believe in themselves, to go after something that they truly believe is going to bring them a lot of joy and excitement and a lot of new memories in their life. And so for me, I mean, I'm 30 now, but I was like 25 at the time, and I was making like 300 grand. I mean, 300 grand for a 25-year-old's a good bit of money.
Yeah, 300 grand for any age is pretty good money. Just
Yeah. And I
clarify that.
literally went from making that to zero, like
Yeah,
nada. I was
yeah,
100% commission. My wife, thankfully, does really well in real estate. And like for at a minimum 2.5 years, like how to provide for us. That for one, you have to have a super supportive wife. And two, you have to humble yourself so much. But to know long term that you don't regret like making a decision, and to know the life like you could create if you get out of that comfortable state and go after like what you really want. To me, that's so important because you find most people, they hate what they do. Like, sure, there's things that I don't like about what I do, but I love what I learn. I love what I'm building, and I love knowing like where I'm going. And generally speaking, I'm very excited every day to like do what I do because I get to meet really cool people. We get to sell really cool things. I get to learn a lot from those people. I get to build on my skills. And, most people just clock in and clock out. And the only reason they do that is because they're not willing to take a bet on themselves and put them in an uncomfortable position to go after something that's really important to them. And I often think of it as, the the analogy of like the dog on the bed of nails. Have you heard of that before?
no, I haven't actually.
So like the dog at the bed of nails, I think it's just a metaphor or just a visual image. But if you imagine there's a dog and it has a bed, but it's full of nails. If you just sat on the one nail, it'd like pierce you. But
Yeah,
if you sat on all of them flat, it'd be pretty uncomfortable, but it wouldn't kill you. It wouldn't hurt you. But
got
it
it.
makes the dog groan. But it doesn't make the dog groan enough or hurt enough to get off that bed of nails. And
Hmm.
most humans are like the dog on the bed of the nails. They get
Interesting.
in a comfortable job and it pays okay, and they get established and they have kids or family or whatever, and they say to themselves, I wish I would do this or I wish I would do that. It's not the right time. Well, it's not the right time for anyone. And if you have a supportive spouse, and if you don't, you have to find the way to kind of make that work. But that's why I also think it's really important to have a supportive spouse, because I mean, it helps a lot whenever you take something and go into a new career or whatever that's completely different. It takes time to build up, and you're going to have to take a step back or two before you take a couple of steps forward. So that's
Yeah.
my kind of spiel on what that means to me.
No, that's awesome, man. That's kind of what I'm going through right now in my personal life with
Sure.
my business. It's like we've gotten to a certain point where I am comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm comfortable enough to stay where I'm at, but I'm not extremely happy because
Yeah.
I have this other vision in life, right? Of where I want my life to be. And
Yeah.
so it's funny because me and my wife were literally just having this conversation a couple weeks ago, and yeah, my wife's a rock star too. She's like on me about stuff, when it comes to the business, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "I guess you're right. I'm just comfortable." And
Hmm.
I think that's the problem. I need to get
Yeah.
uncomfortable. I need to step out of my comfort zone and get just a little uncomfortable. And I think when I started this podcast about a year and a half ago, this is something I used to talk about all the time. And I could
Yeah.
just kind of eased into comfort. And it just kind of like I started to
Hmm.
deal with it a little different. And man, I really like the last couple of weeks, just really like, dude, I've jumped full in on being uncomfortable again. And it's scary, but it's super
Yeah.
rewarding. I know there's reward is at the end. And so
That's where growth comes from.
right. I've just got to stretch
Hmm.
myself in my comfort limit and grow. I love that analogy, the dog on the bed of nails. Um,
Yeah, and I mean, even everything that you're mentioning, Joe, this phrase is used over and over and over and over. And generally, as humans, I think we still don't understand the importance of it. But the analogy that who's the king of leadership, John Maxwell.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's written like 100 books. I mean, it's
Yeah.
insane. It's
I've got like
crazy.
7 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he talks about over and over about how you're, the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
And that's easy to think about, but it's harder to put yourself in a position to be the lowest on the totem pole with those 4 or 5 other friends. And I'll say for me, that's one thing I've tried to really work on the last couple of years, especially like the last year or two, and be very intentional about, is to be the one that makes like the least amount of money, that has the smallest, business and so on, because it shows me areas I need to like work harder, habits I need to change, the different people that I need to be around. And it's been a really big benefit. The challenge to it, though, is I'll often compare myself to those people, and I'll ask myself, why am I not far along, why am I not as far along as they are? Like I work really hard, I'm very consistent, blah, 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 blah. But I have to really like catch myself in those positions and not compare myself in a negative way, but the person, I need to become in order
Yeah.
to get there.
It's
And I
hard
think
to.
that's super important. I mean, that's like the number one thing most people, like very successful people, say, is to be around those right people, and to seek those people out. And some of those relationships take well over a year or two just to start spending time with. But
Yeah. It's hard to give yourself grace, man, when you're around a bunch of killers, dude. I found that that happened to me quite a bit in Arte, because these guys are
yeah,
out there just dominating business, man, and
yeah,
they're bringing in so much revenue, and I'm just like, or at least it appears like that,
hmm,
for a lot of those guys, and I would just be like, man, this guy's 20 something and he's just freaking slaughtering, and
hmm,
I'm 38. What is going on? What have I done in my
yeah,
life? It's really easy to start comparing yourself, but you got to give yourself some grace, you
yeah.
know, and just
And
understand that.
even
Go
even
ahead.
even along those lines too, Joe, like you had mentioned the 20-year-olds or 25-year-olds, whatever, that are making whatever it is, a $50 million company or $100 million company. Sure, those happen, and we recognize those happen, but we have to also remember that that's where the light is shined on the most, like those types of people. and
Right.
and people try to set standards around, well, that's the normal. That's not the normal. That's the 1% or the
Yeah.
2%. Most people that you look at that are very successful in their life, like it took many decades to get there. Like I just mentioned with Dyson, I mean, he was in his mid 40s before he even got the concept to like where people would start buying, the vacuum cleaners. Charlie Munger was in his, I think, mid 30s before he even started working with Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
He was a attorney at the time. So when you look at stories like that, then you kind of remind yourself and you reframe your thinking that, okay, I'm not as behind as I think I am. I might need to change certain habits, but with consistency and putting myself in the right rooms, and like we talked about, staying uncomfortable, those are the important things. And I will get there as long as I and consistent and don't give up. Like the time will come. Will it be on my time horizon? Probably not, but it will happen. And I think that's what we have to believe as entrepreneurs, or it won't happen.
I love it, man. Well, dude, we didn't cover everything that you wanted to talk about, and I'm sorry about that, but
No,
I
it's
think
all
this
good.
is a great show. I hope that anybody who's listening took something from that, because there's a lot of nuggets dropped. If you don't follow Carson on Instagram, LinkedIn, or on Facebook, please find him. He puts out a lot of great content on the aircraft that he's working with, about aircraft ownership and about different types of aircraft and their capabilities. And it's always great to see him on there. He's always got a big smile, putting out some really good content, good info, really good things to think about. Carson, I absolutely loved having you on the show, man. Thank you so
Yeah,
much for your
man, I
time today.
enjoyed it. Well, I
Um,
appreciate the invite, Joe. Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, if you like the show, please go pay the fee. Please share it with your friends. Let somebody know about it. Maybe somebody that you kind of know that you think that might benefit from their aircraft broker out there, an entrepreneur who's kind of struggling in their way and they need somebody to kind of pick them up and you don't know what to say to them, I think this would be a good podcast for them to listen to. Maybe a little pick me up for those guys. But yeah, if you like the show, please like it. Leave a comments in the comment section on the YouTube channel or on any platform that you listen to. It helps the algorithm, help us grow our brand. Thank you so much. I'm Joe Peebles. That was Carson Fox. This is Flight Level 0, and we're out.